Hi dear ones, I hope you're all very, very well today. Today I'd like to speak to you about blindness in general. And I'm not talking about physical blindness, but spiritual, emotional, and cognitive blindness, where it comes from and how perhaps we are able to minimize the risk of being blinded to the truth. Cognitive blindness is the inability to understand something due to the lack of a precept of knowledge, understanding, or belief in a necessary fundamental concept. Cognitive blindness can be a result of inadequate intellectual capacity for understanding something, or it can be the result of an emotional, cultural, or even a cognitive bias. The phenomenon can also be the result of a person being so focused on one thing or perspective, and I'm going to put in here, or even a belief, that they fail to see another, perhaps otherwise obvious thing. One famous experiment that illustrates cognitive blindness was performed by Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simmons, and the experiment was dubbed the Invisible Gorilla Test. The researchers had subjects watch a basketball game. Subjects were then asked to keep track of the number of passes between players. The subject's given objective was actually merely a distraction, and the real observation that the researchers were curious to see were if the subjects managed to see a man in a gorilla suit walking across the court. It might seem impossible to miss something so strange, but more than 50% of the subjects failed to see the gorilla at all. Okay, so that is cognitive blindness. Now, I'm not quite sure if you realize, but each and every one of us have a blind spot in our eyes. Physically, so scientifically true, have a blind spot in our eyes. It's called a scotoma. Everyone has them. They're very normal, and you probably don't even notice yours. Your retina, which is a thin layer of neural tissue at the back of your eye, is made up of tiny light-detecting cells called photoreceptors. When light lands on your retina, it sends electrical bursts through your optic nerve to your brain, and your brain turns the signals into a picture. The spot where your optic nerve connects to your retina has no light-sensitive cells, so you can't see anything there, and that is your blind spot. Why you don't notice it? Well, you probably don't notice it because your other eye makes up for it. Good thing we've got two. Each eye sends data to your brain on its own, so your brain fills in what's missing, and what one eye doesn't see, the other eye does. You probably don't notice it because your eye is actually making up for it, and experts are not sure how your brain fills in the details. They think it's a mix of processing what it thinks is missing and then reusing electrical bursts around your blind spot. What do you find yourself in your life turning a blind eye to? Because of the knowledge that we have agreed to being true throughout our childhoods and knowledge gained from our past experiences, we have formulated what I'd like to call this blind spot in our knowledge receptors, in our belief system. And it's the same sort of gap as what you would find in the eye, where we fill in our view of others based on our past experiences, not only of them, but our assumptions that they view life the same way we do. The truth is that everyone has a point of view that is different to our own, and each person has a different blind spot. The eye sees only what the mind is willing to comprehend. Okay, so when we look at our blind spot physically, and when we see that it fills in gaps where there is a blind spot, we understand that the mind fills in only what it is willing to comprehend. So once it is unwilling to comprehend something, it will not actually put that information into the bigger picture. So although our vibe attracts our tribe, even within a community of like-minded individuals, different things will resonate differently with different people. You can have a movie house filled with all sorts of different people from completely different walks of life. You can actually even have a church where everybody goes to worship with the same rules, with the same belief system, but something that the priest says will resonate differently from you and the person sitting right next to you. I'm going to bring it back to the movie situation because that's a lot easier to use as an example. You and a group of your best friends or your family may go and see a movie all together. And when you come out of the movie house, after the movie has been completed, everybody has a different understanding of what actually occurred and took place. So because somebody in the family or in the group of friends may be going through a breakup, you might find that that particular person resonates with the character who is also either having difficulties in a love relationship or maybe searching for something that they do not have. Whereas somebody else in that particular group might be resonating with another person who's got a successful relationship. And when they come out of the movie house and they start talking about it, you'll find that the emphasis is put on something completely different. So also how we remember certain things to be is how we cognitively and what our mind was willing to see that took place in that particular picture is what we will see and what we will remember. We need to also understand that when we judge others on our experience of that particular situation, and in so doing make assumptions that they experienced the same event the same way that we do, we're actually setting both them and us up for failure. Because the assumption that is made, and therefore then the debate or the argument that ensues, is based on what we think the other person experienced, instead of asking them how they experienced certain things. We also often find that our personal definition of a certain word or concept may differ greatly from somebody else's. We might look at something, a concept, with a big picture perspective and perhaps see that particular thing with all different aspects of ourselves. So we might see it from a spiritual perspective, we might see it from a physical perspective, and we might see it from an emotional perspective. But someone else who takes every single thing literally may not be able to see on all different perspectives and may only have a very one-dimensional understanding or a very literal understanding of that particular concept, which then makes it very difficult for one to have a conversation with that person, because you might find that one person and another completely at cross purposes with each other, having a conversation that never actually meets in the middle. It is sad, unfortunately, that this does happen, but when certain people do not resonate with you, you will find eventually that they will fall away and out of your life, making space for those who do resonate with you. When we are sometimes in situations of discomfort and dis-ease, we find ourselves falling back on the beliefs and on the cognitive sight that we might have had from a previous encounter or perhaps from our childhood. And in so doing, we are creating so many assumptions about the situation and about the other person that is involved in that particular event. And when we have a situation of two people being at cross purposes, it is very often because they're not sort of sitting on the same side of the 9 or the 6. If you would have to draw a 9 or a 6 on the floor and you have two people on either side of it, one person sees 9 and the other one sees a 6. It's exactly the same thing and both people are right. So when we are interacting with ourselves, with our shadow selves, when we're interacting with other people as well, we need to understand that very often we're filling in the blanks, or we might even be reading between the lines. When we are our authentic selves and we have uncovered all of our own stuff, and we're able to bring our skeletons out of the darkness of the closet and into the light, and we see things exactly as they are, we're able then to eliminate, or let's say reduce, the size of our blind spot, our cognitive and belief system blind spot. The knowledge that other people do not see things in the same way as we do, I think, is very poignant here as well. I feel that when we consider that somebody else may have a different point of view or perspective, especially when sitting around the table and having a discussion with somebody who has had a completely different life experience to you, to be able to be open to receiving the knowledge from somebody else of their own experiences is actually so beneficial to yourself, because it helps you to understand that your experiences are not the only way to experience life, relationships, and situations in general. When we start to be open to receiving more knowledge from other people, and to understand that your way isn't the only way of doing things, that your way isn't the only way of understanding things, then we start to reduce blind spots quite considerably, not only cognitive, but emotional and spiritual as well. Even Buddha said, question everything, even what I tell you. When we question, we start uncovering things, and then it is less likely that we are making assumptions about a subject that we may not necessarily be experts on. And let's be honest, even though we find or we feel that we are experts on ourselves, the reality is that we're still learning about ourselves and our shadow selves every single day. We're uncovering stuff. We're perhaps hiding certain things. And of course, when we hide certain things, there's more things to uncover. So transparency within yourself is so important. And once you have that transparency within yourself, you're able to understand that other people may have greater difficulty at perhaps having a relationship with their shadow selves. And that will influence their cognitive blindness quite considerably. Because when you're only focused on somebody's negative points, or the fact that you're feeling vulnerable and that nobody cares, you actually find yourself then having this cognitive blindness of not seeing another person's care or support or love. Remember, when people love us, they only love us in the way that they are able to, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's the way we need it to be. So that is why it's so important to fulfill within ourselves everything that we require, including self-approval, including being our own best friend, in order to make sure that we are so loved, that we love ourselves so unconditionally, that when we receive love from others, it doesn't matter in which format it comes, because it is a bonus whichever way it does. Today and every day, please stay and stand strong in your power, in the foundation of the 4 agreements. Be impeccable with your word, especially and even with yourself. Please do not make assumptions. It makes an ass out of you and out of me. Don't take anything personally, because other people react according to their own cognitive blindness. And you can only always ever do your best. And the 5 Reiki principles. Just for today, do not worry, because the universe has your back. You've asked for what you want and what you need, so worrying is not going to make any difference to it. Let go and let God, or let the angels, sort this out for you, because you've asked for it. Just for today, do not anger, for you hold on to that hot ember and you're the only one that gets burnt. Let it go, and don't give your precious energy to that thing that angered you. Just for today, work honestly and hard on yourself, and do your work with integrity. just for today, be kind to all living things. And just for today, dear ones, be grateful for everything you have, especially your knowledge of self, because it allows you to grow and improve and decrease and diminish that blind spot in your belief system. Much love.